like get my report going so that we can put this. And I'm going to see if we can get this on Facebook at the same time. Sometimes it doesn't work, but we'll see if I can get on here this time. And it's not being as cooperative with me as I would like. So we will just move on. And next we have the assisted living mansion. And Brett Chapkavis has put together a really nice program for a high-end 16-bed model. Also on his website is a great collection of training videos, mostly geared to the experienced operators. If you navigate to palm.university, you can get more information on that. And next we have the RAL National Association. I don't know if we might have somebody who might want to speak on that. Michelle?
Yeah, well, Brian's not here, so I can just say the RAL National Association loves, Brian and I are both on the board. Brian's the president, loves working with the amazing state associations like this one, and Vern's been like the leader of all of them. So, but it's a great group to join so that you have the state level connection and the national level connection. And of course, there's the national convention every year that we always go to. It's a great place for networking, learning new stuff. They recommend it. And there's some other resources on their website as well as a locator where you can list your home. So another way for people to be able to find you.
Thank you, Michelle. So you can go to www.ralna.com and sign up for free. And next, while we're talking about the RAL, I'd like to talk about the RAL Academy. If you are new to assisted living, then this is the place we recommend. It's basic training for running an assisted living. So I always encourage my clients that are getting started to go here. We have a link to it directly on our website. You can see at the top, it's just RAL Academy or ralacademy.com. So next we want to talk a little bit about assisted living marketing. And this is Peter Brissett with more than a decade of experience. Did customized services that work for small, large, and multi-location communities. Assisted living marketing is your trusted partner for digital and print marketing in the assisted living industry. And next, we're going to talk about senior care administrator coaching. And I've got somebody to talk about that. Janet.
That's so nice, Vern. Thank you. My name's Janet Cornell. I run my own company called Senior Care Administrator Coaching. I ran 8 group homes for 14 years and learned through that process of just hardship. They're not that hard to run. They're really not. I think group home owners sometimes make them harder to run than they need to be. So then I morphed myself, when that company sold, I morphed myself into a consultant. I teach the 40-hour administrator certificate program. I started a new class on administrator designee because I was getting way too many calls from administrator designees on they don't know what they're doing. So I started that class. It was tons of fun. We had 8 hours of online Zoom of how to run a home when your administrator's out of town. So that's what I love to do. Vern and I have been friends for a long time. Michelle and I know each other for a long time. So it's just, you know, assisted living in a smaller setting is just awesome. And that's my passion. So that's why I started my own company. Yeah.
And I always recommend to my clients to have Janet come through and do a mock survey. And she'll act like that big bad state and tell you everything that you're doing wrong, so that when the big bad state comes through, you don't get tags.
Well, and it's super fun because it's like a scavenger hunt for me. You know, it is. It's like a scavenger hunt of what isn't like it's supposed to be. You know, and it's a ton of fun. I'm not, you know, demeaning anyway. There's just things that I see that you don't see. So it's a lot of fun to do a mock survey.
All right, thanks, Janet. Next, I'm going to go to the ICOR. This is the Investment Community of the Rockies. ICOR is Colorado's only nationally recognized and award-winning Real Estate Investors Association, serving Denver Metro, Colorado Springs, Fort Collins, and Northern Colorado, as well as real estate and rental property investors across the state. You can go to icorockies.com to visit their website. I've been a member of ICOR for, many years, I think 12 years now. It's a great place to be, very good organization as far as RIAs go. And next, our favorite attorneys, Pinkowski Law, and we've got Michelle here to talk a little bit about Pinkowski Law. You're muted.
Sorry, long day. We do all things assisted living from the start, helping you find a great location, working with zoning issues, working with HOA questions, to setting up your business, and then things that come up during operation. So if you haven't had Janet come through and do your mock survey, and the big bad state did come through and tag you on a couple of things, and you want to fight that, then that's where we can come in. We do recommend also that you have Janet come in first, though, as much fun as we like to have fighting things on your behalf. Yeah, but we love this industry. This is what we do day in and day out, pretty much full time. So it's great being part of this group.
Thanks, Michelle. Always glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, next we're going to talk about the A Better Way funding, and this is the group that I'm part of. And actually, we've got Jim Flint, our managing partner, here with us. Jim, you want to say a few words about A Better Way funding?
Okay, thanks, Vern. Although you should know of all people that when you ask a salesman to say a few words, it doesn't ever work out that way. So anyway, so this is one of the parts of our company. We have a real estate company, and we help people buy any kind of real estate, but we do specialize in assisted living and group homes. We form partnerships to buy those and help people get started. We identify a home and hopefully find an operator to lease the building from us that matches that building, the right size, location, Medicaid or private pay, and all those aspects. We fund some improvements if the home needs some improvements, and then we lease it to you with an option to buy it in 3 to 5 years. So you know the lease rate and you know the option price, and if you improve the operation, then you could buy it from us with probably not too much cash out of pocket, because the value will go up and you can get an SBA loan. So any kind of interest you have in either investing as a passive investor or being an operator, let Vern know, and we'll be glad to give you some more details. Right now, we are looking at a property in Las Vegas. We're going to fly out tomorrow to see it, but our operators have already approved it, and so it's a 60 bedroom facility with a license for 80 beds, and we're getting it for a bargain price of only $13 million. So you better sign up today. So
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. And next, I'm going to chat a little bit about Grand Avenue Business Brokers at A Better Way Realty. That's my company, which I hang my license at A Better Way Realty under Jim. And I've got over 30 years of business experience. I've done over 80 assisted living transactions. I think I may have a typo in that number. It's over 100 million, but I don't know where the 8 came from. Maybe I have fat fingers, or maybe I just need to check my math. I am a certified business intermediary, and I am a certified senior housing investment professional, and obviously I specialize in assisted living. Let's see if I've got any quick recent activity. I didn't update this for tonight, but recently we did close 30 beds in Central Illinois. That was a heck of a deal that we got on that. And let's see, there is a 12-bed MI house in North Metro. There's a 15-bed MI/AL, although I think we've got the deal in progress on that. I have a package in Eastern Colorado that is 89 beds, which is 66% of the market out there in 6,000 square miles, and it's throwing off a little bit more than $1 million a year in net operating income. So if you have any interest in that package, please give me a call. If you need any help buying or selling, I'm here for you. There's my number, 303-888-0078. And we always like to hear from CALA, the Colorado Assisted Living Association, and we happen to have the president of CALA presenting for us tonight. So Janet, would you like to tell us what's going on from CALA?
Yes, thank you, Vern. I am the president of CALA, Colorado Assisted Living Association. We have always been the association for the smaller assisted livings, although we seem to be morphing into getting some bigger companies like Sunrise. So we specialize usually in under 40, 50 beds, something like that. We're an arm of support for you. We go all the way down to the nitty gritty. If you have a question that you do not want to ask the state health department, you can ask CALA and one of us will go to the state for you, because you don't want to rat yourself out that you don't know what you're doing. So CALA has been around for a number of years. We're growing bigger and better. And tonight you'll learn that we're no longer willing to stand by and let things happen. We are active in our legislative process, and that will be the program for tonight.
Awesome. Thank you, Janet. And while we have you there, I just want to do a brief introduction. So I've known Janet for several years, and she's done such an outstanding job. When she was running her 8 homes, they were running like clockwork. And then since she's left that, she's been very involved and still in the community, helping people such as yourselves, being the president and doing so much. And when we were talking last month, she was telling me what she was doing with the legislature here in Colorado, which is really tough. And I thought, hey, this is something that everybody, regardless what state you're in, can benefit from. Yeah. How she's maneuvering through the red tape that you deal with. So I am going to turn it over to Janet for her presentation. Let's please give her a round of applause.
Thank you. That's nice. I've been doing this since 2002. And like most of you, I started as the marketing person. And I have a master's in marketing, specifically in healthcare marketing. And then our administrator abruptly resigned, and the owners, we were a family-run business of 8 homes. They asked me to take the administrator's class. And I said, okay, I'll do it for 1 year. And that was in 2007 that I went for the administrator certificate. And then I liked it, and I stayed for 14 years being the administrator of 8 homes. So it was a learning experience. I did not know what I was doing when I took over that company. I thought, how hard can it be? And then I sat there the first day going, oh my God, I got to get myself a consultant. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I reached out to somebody that did know what she was doing. And then I was able to work that through. And then after 3 years of spending life in like the hamster wheel, like this, I didn't feel like I was being successful because I was making things harder on myself. So then we just totally revamped the company, reorganized, and then I could actually get a handle on it. So that's one of my passions. And then we started watching the regulations. We had the same exact regulations from the time I started in 2010. And then all of a sudden the governor decided in 2017 that we needed the regulations rewritten. And that's where I met Michelle and Brian Pinkowski. That was an ordeal to rewrite those regs and feel like we didn't quite have the say that we thought we did on rewriting things. And since that time, now I've morphed into being involved with the legislative process here in Colorado. It's an eye-opener. It's an eye-opener of how many people make decisions on this industry that don't know about the industry. Some of our legislators don't know the difference between assisted living and skilled care, and they're making decisions for us on that. So when I took over as president of CALA, I said, no more, no more. We're done playing defense and just trying to defend ourselves when policy is being made. I just wanted to flip us to be on the offense. How about we show up as a player in the arena? How about we start changing things for the better of assisted living? So that's what we started doing. And so let me share my presentation for tonight. On I'm surprised Vern wanted me to do this because this is my hot button of being an advocate for the business that you own. And show up. So my presentation for tonight is on advocacy matters. The value of being involved in the decisions being made for the assisted living industry is presented by me. Here you go. And the reason it matters is because it makes a difference. It does. Advocating for laws and regulations that improve the quality of life for residents, improve the safety, and then most importantly for you guys, provide financial stability for the assisted living facilities. It's extremely important. I'm surprised at the number of people that are ignoring what's going on. So that's my kind of my hot button. Not all the issues passed by legislators are well thought out, and they're not a working solution for providers for assisted living services, and many have unforeseen consequences. A couple of years ago, they passed a bill for involuntary discharge. It's a disaster. It's a disaster, and nobody knew that except for us providers, and we could not stop that from going into effect. Fines for poor regulatory compliance without a ceiling limit. They used to be $2,000 per calendar year in Colorado. Now they're $10,000 or more. I gotta move you guys over here. Depending on what the violation was. And CDPHE decides where that ceiling is, which is kind of scary because there's no gatekeeper there. You know, CDPHE is our state health department. So this is not only a Colorado presentation, it's for all of you in different states. Know what's going on because you need to be in that arena making decisions for your own business because you're buying into a business and it's your financial asset. Know what's going on. Here were some of the things that were done in the recent changes. The Senate Bill 2279 was dementia training. Each staff member has to have 4 hours of additional training. That one's actually not a bad thing. You know, we agreed with that. There's a lot of people living in assisted living that have dementia. So 4 hours of training for each additional staff member is not a big deal. This was passed in 22 also, the mental health residential facilities. We have a fourth population that rolls up under assisted living. It's more of a supported living program for people that have substance abuse issues and they're trying to, you know, get support above like a sober living, or they need more support than a sober living can do. They need somebody to manage their meds, that kind of stuff. So here's our favorite one. Michelle's probably laughing because this is when I met Brian and Michelle. Senate Bill 22154. Concerning increasing safety in assisted living. Isn't that a nice title? Doesn't everybody want assisted living to be safe? That's where involuntary discharge showed up. It is not making assisted living safer. Involuntary discharge for Colorado is making you keep somebody that's hitting people because he has advanced stage dementia and he's taking the towel bar off of the rack and hitting people. But because it's an involuntary discharge, the family can challenge that. So right there is where we decided we need to be proactive because this bill was hard for us to fight because the name concerning, you know, increasing safety in assisted living, what senator is going to vote against this title? They're not. So that gave us a quick education in how this is run. In 2017, Chapter 7 had a rewrite process. We went from 42 pages of regulation to 81, and this is only in Chapter 7. That is exactly the same time where the state adopted FGI guidelines from group homes. And I got to tell you guys, without Michelle Pinkowski, we would, oops, gotta go back. Without Michelle's input, FGI would have required group homes to have an elevator large enough to fit a gurney. Is there any single family home in Colorado that has an elevator this size that can fit a gurney? So that was Michelle and Brian's, you know, win there, that they were able to steer that in a better direction. And that was back in 2017. So right then is when I thought, you have to know what's going on because that FGI requirement alone would have put out all of the group homes. We have 450 licensed facilities in Colorado under the bed size of 19. That would have really been devastating to our industry if Michelle and Brian had not caught that and fought that. So moving us again. The pandemic forever changed things in assisted living. We lived through, we all thought it was over in like 18 months. The state went on for like 2.5 years because they didn't think it was over yet. A lot of the emergency declarations that were put in place for COVID, they morphed right into our regulations without any stakeholder process in there. So some of those were fit testing, which is very difficult to do for a group home. Infection control measures, isolating residents who are ill. How exactly do you do that in a single family home? You know, we have very small homes. It's not like we have a hallway to isolate people in. We have a single family home with 5 bedrooms. So that got put in. Infectious control measures, including mitigation, vaccine clinics that you have to hold on site, treatment plans. Those were all part of skilled nursing before the pandemic. We didn't keep people with infectious control issues. It was part of our regulations under don't keep people you can't care for. And then all of a sudden it morphed into, oh, sorry, you now have to keep somebody that has an infectious illness. And you know, you get to deal with that and try to keep, I was running secure dementia homes at that time. Try to keep advanced stage dementia in their bedroom when, first of all, they don't really think they're sick. They don't remember. It's like herding cats with the door open in the bedroom. All the cats stay in there. You can't keep them in there. So, and now every facility in Colorado has to have an infectious control officer. They have to take an 1.5-hour class on co-train on infectious control. Do you know how long nurses take to learn infectious control? They have class after class after class, but we're held to the same standards sometimes as that. And then during the COVID pandemic, you had to pay care staff for their time off, which was the beginning of the FMLA program, which has straddled the financial burden on all small businesses in Colorado, not only assisted living. That's that extra time off that they can have for sick time. So just looking at this information, I hope it motivates all of you to get involved, because our state health department and our legislators here are pretty progressive without knowing the consequences sometimes of what they pass, because sometimes it's not favorable. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, you know, So here are some things that are up for 2025 in Colorado. We have worker protection, collective bargaining. I think a lot of you have read this in the news. That's that second vote, you know, on, it used to be, it is right now, 75% of the workers in a facility have to vote that they want to be union before they have union dues enforced. This one was enforcement of wage and hour laws. We have something in Colorado called wage theft. If you don't know what wage theft is, you're behind. Because sometimes employers will pay for somebody to get a QMAP, which is a qualified medication administration program that they send them through, so they can serve medications. And if they take that for the job, and then they don't stay, and some employers think they can recoup that cost by taking it back out of their paycheck, that's an example of wage theft. So this enforcement here strengthens that enforcement mechanism, ensuring workers receive fair compensation for their labor by enhancing penalties for violation and improving the complaint process. So first of all, wage theft is not clearly understood by a lot of people. So you could have advanced penalties by not even knowing what wage theft is. So it's not a bad thing. You can't, I mean, we all want our employees to be paid fairly, you know, but if you don't understand wage theft and you make a mistake, and now you have, you know, increased fines for that. Just cause for employment. This is something that will most likely show up on our, sorry about that. Just cause for employment. Colorado is an at-will state. That means you can let somebody go at any time. And you don't have to justify it. Well, the just cause, which will be showing up on the ballot, says that you got to justify why you let them go, which means you got to document of why you let somebody go. That is a huge hassle in some circumstances. Sometimes you can't give somebody a second chance and you just need to let them go. And maybe you didn't document that they called in sick for 8 times in a row. I had a staff member that used to call in sick all the time because her grandpa died. One time I just asked her, I said, how many grandpas do you have? So that just cause for employment is up. It will go to the people, people of Colorado for a vote. Medicaid funding. That's going to be a tough one. Right now, our legislators working through this. They have to make cuts because Colorado is $1.2 billion short of making the Colorado budget. That's a lot of dollars. And Medicaid spending is one of the top 3 expenditures for Colorado. So most likely the assisted living homes in Colorado are going to take a 1 to 2% cut. We're advocating against that. We're making a lot of noise to not have that happen because we have 290 group homes that have less than 8 beds. They need to go to 10 beds to be able to survive this cut. So we are working aggressively and letting the legislators know that we cannot accept a 1 to 2% cut in Medicaid funding. We just can't. Vern has some homes that they can't withstand a 1 to 2% Medicaid cut, or 3%. What if they get hit with another 2% from the federal? That's a 4% cut. And they're already on a really thin margin of profit anyway, because of our increase in minimum wage, the increase in grocery cost, the increase of utilities. So Medicaid funding also is something that's, Vern's words shaking in his boots down there. Like, what the heck? I don't want that. So those are the things that are currently happening in Colorado. And so how can you help? How can you as an assisted living owner help? Well, first of all, you need to be involved. You need to belong to an association, and we follow up on bills, CALA does, and we push for reform. We do it as a bigger level. And then CALA doesn't have a big enough voice. Rachel and I, Rachel's our president-elect, we got frustrated because we don't have a big enough voice. So CALA joined the Colorado Chamber because they have a bigger voice. So we're a little group joining a bigger group and making a difference there. But we watch bills. We do have a lobbyist. It's impossible for us to watch bills that affect our business because they're not all tag teamed to assisted living. They're small business, they're minimum wage, they're Medicaid, they're healthcare facilities. It's all intertwined, and you can't possibly find those unless you have a lobbyist that knows what she's doing. Our lobbyist is Jennifer Mello. CALA does have to pay her. So we have to have membership and educational fees to pay for that lobbyist. CALA is 100% volunteer board. I do not get paid for being the president. I do a number of things. Michelle also is on the board of CALA. She does not get paid for that stuff. But we have a passion to make sure this industry survives as smaller assisted living. So we work on the CALA board together and make sure that we show up and know what's going on. As a group homeowner, you have people in your area, so you can network and collaborate with your local legislators and policymakers to help build relationships with them. You can create opportunities to educate these people who pass the bills. And many of our legislators do not know the difference between assisted living and nursing home care. They don't. Rachel and I went to a happy hour at the Brown Palace, and there was a ton of senators and House representatives there. It got to be the joke of the night. Many of them thought Windcrest, Sunrise, Brookdale, they all assumed that they took Medicaid. And it became the joke of the night when they were like, a lot of them would ask, what am I doing when my mother-in-law runs out of money and she needs to be on Medicaid? I said, you're taking her home. They're like, no, she's not living with me. She's not gonna live with me. And then we ended up running into 3 or 4 other people. And interesting to say, it was only about the mother-in-laws. It was never about my mother. Everybody wants to take their mother home and take care of her. Nobody wants their mother-in-law. So we had so much fun that night educating people on not everybody takes Medicaid, because it's just assumed that if you spend $500,000 for your parents to live at Windcrest, they're going to keep them through end of life, and they're not. Their asset is spent and they have to move on to a Medicaid. So we are in a real peculiar situation in Colorado with not enough Medicaid beds and not enough funding from Medicaid facilities to make ends meet. And if a business cannot continue to operate in the red, they go out of business. They do. It's just the, plain truth of it. So you can have an influence on regulations. By participating in the legislative process, you can influence regulators that affect your operations, such as staffing requirements. We don't have those in Colorado. They do in California now. I watch their stuff because we're watching other states. Training and FGI guidelines for Colorado. So what are we going to do in the state of Colorado if they start implementing staffing requirements, such as they did for skilled care? Because that already passed on a federal level, and that's straddling for the skilled nursing units, And how are you going to know what's in the works if you're not involved? How will you know what people are working on unless you're there? Unless you have somebody that's giving you information on what's being worked on, So I already said, in my opinion, we're better off being on the offense than on defense. Michelle and Brian and a number of us were on the defense with that Senate Bill 154 years ago, and we got nowhere, and we spent a ton of time. We're on offense now. So Cal is now a proactive player in the legislative process, and we're just not reacting to what got passed. We're not. So last year, we did pass a bill. It was Senate Bill 24-167. It was concerning the portability requirements for direct healthcare workers. This allows for assisted living providers to accept a certificate of training for topics covered as portable. This allows us to accept training that somebody got as a previous employer, because we are one of the, I keep having to move you guys so I can read my screen. We're one of the few industries that doesn't recognize the staff members' previous experience. They do in restaurants, they do in retail, they do in a lot of industries, and not in assisted living. We had to start over again all the time with basic first aid, person-centered care, how to wash your hands, basic first aid. We had to start over all the time. So we were able to pass that bill last year. It was an uphill battle. If you've ever been through that process, you're going to wish you paid attention to your high school government class, because it's hard. It gets rewritten so many times, and you wordsmith it and you wordsmith it, and somebody doesn't like this word, and you go back to the original draft, and then you have to make sure your intent is still there. It's a lot of work to pass a bill, but we wanted to do this for providers, mainly in our smaller environments, because sometimes you have to get somebody training on the floor. So I estimate that by passing that bill, we saved providers about 8 hours of paid training. So, I think when you pay your staff $17 to $18 an hour, by the time you pay all the payroll taxes, you're at $23, $24 an hour. And if you have to sit there and do the training with them, you're higher than that. So that alone saves operators, $200 in training sometimes, because they can get that. And you're also not having to pay somebody overtime, because you can get this person up and running faster. So this was our first success of being involved in the process. So it was really enlightening to go through that process of writing the bill, filing the bill, getting it voted on. It has to go through 5 steps to actually make it into law. And then it has to go through the state health department, because they have to rewrite the regulations to fit the new law. So that had to take another year. So anyway, so that was our first chance of being on offense and not defense. This is our bill this year, which came about only because we were involved in the legislative process. We were not the initiators on this. I was down at the Capitol, working on some other things, and we ended up finding somebody that was listening to our concerns with FGI. This bill, it's called Concerning Changes to the Medical Assistance Program, but this House representative was willing to dump it into her bill. So the bill exempts assisted living residents with fewer than 19 beds that has not undergone new construction or renovation, and that complies with the standard assisted living residents with all, it exempts us from being part of the FGI guidelines. So you're asking, okay, so what does that mean? Well, right now, CDPHE has decided that anybody that wants to increase beds simply by changing a private room to a shared room must go through the approval process with FGI. Michelle and Brian deal with this all the time. It's just a nightmare to get tangled up with FGI. And the reason they said it was because you're changing the function of the room. Vern, if you have a bedroom that now, it used to be a private room and now it's a shared, tell me how you're changing the function of that room. Aren't they both sleeping, especially some older people? You're not having like wild parties in that room. You're not doing anything, you're sleeping. So that just irritated me beyond belief. We are not changing the function of the room. Now, yes, you have two people that have to escape in a fire through that room, but two people getting out a single doorway is not a big deal, you know? So right there, they said you have to get FGI approval because you're changing the function of the room. The FGI process in Denver could take months. And you're probably going to be straddled with having an architect draw up the plan, the footprint of the home, and here's where the bedroom is, and here's, you know. So I actually did this with two of the homes that I managed. I took them from 5 beds to 8. And all I had to do was meet with the county, and they signed off on it. I met with the local fire department. They came through the home and walked through the home, and we had all of our fire, you know, safety up to snuff. And I paid $180 to increase it from 5 to 8 beds. And now we're straddled with this stuff. So Michelle's been working with me on this. We probably have adjusted the language on this 3 times, 4 times. And it's not that many words. And the state health department is involved now. And then they get their input. And then we had to meet with the governor's office. And so we're in the process of trying to get this passed. And this will be our second bill of being on offense instead of defense. So a friend of mine actually owns a home, and she's returning a bedroom. She turned one of the bedrooms into the home into an office space and a staff training room. And now she needs to go to 9 beds in that house because she's Medicaid only. They are blocking her, saying she's changing the function of that room because it used to be a staff training room and now she's changing it to a bedroom, but it used to be a bedroom. So that's how weird it is out there right now. So that's why you need, some of the reasons why you need to be involved. So I looked up the other day, where does Colorado compare to other places in the United States? Because some of you are from other states. Well, guess who's number 1 in regulations? Is anybody surprised? California, New York, New Jersey, Washington, and Massachusetts. All of those 5 have the strictest regulations. Colorado used to be up in that, but now they've gotten stricter. So according to everything that I can find, we fall into the 10 to 15 most regulated states for assisted living. The Colorado Chamber knows that Colorado is 6th in the most regulated states in the United States. We are now 6th, which really shuts out small business when you have that kind of regulation. And Vern, you know from investors, the more regulated the state is, the less likely investors want to go there. And we also know that our investors get shy of investing in places that continually change and flip-flop on their regulations and that kind of thing. So None of this is favorable for Colorado, for us to be continuing to go down this path of more regulations. Colorado has approximately 25,500 beds. We're just now at the same level of beds we had in 2019. That's 6 years ago. And everybody knows what the silver tsunami is. Vern's part of the silver tsunami, aren't you, Vern? No, I'm kidding. The silver tsunami is all the people that are aging into needing assisted living care. In Colorado, we have 9% of the population every year that needs assisted living care, and we've broadened the definition of assisted care to include mental health, brain injury, and substance abuse homes. So we're broadening the definition of assisted living care, but we're at the same number of beds we used to be at in 2019. That's not a good thing for Colorado. That's not, especially when our Medicaid beds are shrinking. We have 400 less Medicaid beds than we did in 2019. It's not a good thing for our seniors that are going to run out of money, or our mental health people that already don't have money. So I don't want to be all negative Nelly on this, but what if all of you guys got involved and we were successful in getting group homes out of this craziness and under a different set of regulations? Vern, you would like that. You would like to have us not straddled with this craziness of food safety. Okay, here's a food safety regulation. CALA does this Tidbit Tuesday where we find the weirdest things in the regs and we put them out there. Do you know that if you serve soft cheeses in assisted living homes in Colorado, you should heat the cheese first? What happens to cheese when you heat the cheese? Is it not called cheese sauce at that point? But it actually does say, if you're going to serve soft cheeses in assisted livings in Colorado, you should heat the cheese. It actually says if you're going to serve deli meats in Colorado, you should heat up the deli meats. Nobody heats up the turkey before they make a sandwich. I'm going to tell you. That's how overburdening our regulations are. So, but what if we were successful in getting out from under that? Arizona, they have adult foster homes with 1 to 4 residents. They're licensed separately with less stringent regulations. Assisted living homes with 5 to 10 residents, they have more regulations, but they're still a smaller scale. And 11 and up are the larger facilities. Okay, it's a precedent that's already been started. Here's Texas. Type A and type B. I actually love this because if residents can evacuate independently, you're type A. And you don't have nearly as strict of regulations as the type B homes. Because people that cannot evacuate independently are in wheelchairs, they may have some severe mental issues that they cannot evacuate. But you know how many people live in assisted living that can evacuate independently? A lot. You know how many group homes? All of my group homes, all of my residents could have evacuated independently. So we could have been under type A. Small assisted livings in Texas, 4 to 16 beds, have different licensing standards than the large guys. The large guys are 17 beds and over. In Colorado, it's already written into regs, 19 and over follows different regs. So we have a natural boundary already in regulations at 19 and under. That's why Michelle and I the other day spent an hour with the governor's office and the state of, CDPHE talking about 19 and under, and we wanted it defined in the bill because they wanted to put in some ordinary or homes in ordinary single family neighborhoods. That's undefined to me. So anyway, we worked on 19 beds and under. So that's a natural barrier that we already had, or natural dividing line that could happen in Colorado. California has residential care facilities for the elderly that have different licensing standards depending on the capacity of the home. And then Georgia, personal care homes are 2 to 24. I like that. Less stringent regulations than full assisted living facilities. And 25 and up is different, So here's my soapbox. we can only be successful if we're all going to work together on this. I can't be the president of CALA that goes to the meetings, because one day they actually said, Janet, you're the only one whining about this. When I was whining about the shared rooms at FGI, you're the only one whining. And I don't even have a home, is what they told me. You're whining about it and you don't even own a home. So then we got Michelle involved, and they pretty much dismissed her too and said, oh, sorry, we already voted on this, or we already moving on by. But if we work together on this, we can make a difference. We can. And we need Vern from the investor side. We need Jim from the investor side, Michelle and Brian from the legal side, but we need homeowners. We need everybody in the game. So there's my spiel of, we really do, because you don't know if you're in a state that has progressive legislators, a progressive state health department, you don't know what game you're playing. And we didn't in Colorado until 2017 when it started rolling over on us, you know? So that's my spiel of really find out what's going on. So Allison is in California. How do you know what's being passed there? You don't. You could put it into GPT. Do you know? Okay, if you look on the internet, you have to go under everybody's, if you go on Google, you have to say, Google this. You have to look at all the articles. If you go into Chat GPT and you put in, what are all the labor laws passed in Colorado in the last 3 years? It gives you a summary of all of them. It's so easy. I went in and looked at number of beds per 1,000 people the other day, and it was super easy to find out. You know, because I was thinking, okay, where are we in Colorado? Because we need a bigger picture in Colorado than just Colorado. Where are we nationwide? We have a lot of beds per 1,000, and we actually have a very healthy population in Colorado. So those might be at odds, because the average age of people living in assisted living in Colorado is 87. It's 82 in the South. It's 5 years younger in the South. And they have less assisted livings per 1,000 people. So your occupancy is going to be so much better. So regardless of where you're at, you can look at all over the United States simply by putting in Chat GPT. Because Chat GPT pulls information from everything that's on the web, and it gives you the summary, you know, and it's so helpful. I actually typed in, give me a training on residents' rights in Colorado, or residents' rights consistent with Colorado regulations for assisted living. It spit out 10 questions for me on residents' rights. So you have to be able to be empowered and find that information, because you don't have time. Allison, you're actually working full time, and you're trying to invest in a business. You don't have time to look all this stuff up. So you need to be able to go into some place and say, okay, what am I working with here with the regulations that are coming down? You know, how do I find the regulations? I show a lot of people how to find the regulations. I show people a lot how to find how many places are in this county, how many assisted living facilities are already in this county, in this town. You know, it's all there. You just have to know where to find it. But there's my soapbox story for tonight. You need to be involved, because you help shape the landscape for your business in years to come. Because if you get straddled with regulation like we are, it's going to take us 3 years to unwind that involuntary discharge. You know, it's going to take us 3, because you cannot, once a bill gets passed, it gets written into law, then it gets put into regulation. You have to have statistics against it to change it. That takes 2 years to change that thing. And it's a freaking disaster right now for a lot of providers, you know? So we spend a lot of time at CALA training providers on, here's how you build the case. We no longer I used to take people with advanced stage dementia on well, let's see if it works. And if it doesn't work, you know, you can't do that in Colorado. You can't take a try before you buy the person. You can't, because you're straddled with involuntary discharge, which is horrible for us. So that's my point, is get involved early in the process so that you know what's coming down, and you can steer those people, and you can educate your legislators that that's not a good idea. But we got involved in the process late on that, and we were not able to overcome it. So in all the states that you guys are involved in, at least know the playing field of that state. Is that a good way to put that? So Anyway, yeah, so now we got about 10 minutes left for questions. But we hope they answered that.
Anybody have some questions? I know I do, but I'll go last.
Hey, this is Butch. Thank you so much for this presentation. I actually joined because I live in the state of Washington, and because of regulations and things of that nature, I can't buy a business in my in my backyard. I have to look out of the state because it's only 6 residents here, right?
Yeah.
And the regulations need to change. I mean, we all know about the silver tsunami.
Mhm.
I mean, we all know about it, but you know, the populace cannot withstand just having, you know, these single family homes being 6 beds. So I kind of wanted to, you know, sit through your presentation and see how, you know, you did things, and not to
Yep.
say that I'm, you know, gonna go on this quest for, you know, Washington State now, but it may be something I do down the road, and maybe, you know, hopefully, you know, these legislators their eyes get open because of this, you know, silver tsunami coming.
Yeah, and
My
the silver
question,
tsunami is not state, it's not only Colorado, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
yeah,
Yeah.
my question, because of that, right, the national shortage, you know, we all know about that. How, I mean, this is a problem in every state, even in states that are super friendly to, you know, our business models, right? It's still not enough. So how can this be kind of propelled, you know, on the national level? I mean, like this, in my opinion, you know, my mom's 70 and she lives with us, and you know, this is why I even started thinking about this. Is that this is like like almost an emergent situation? You
Yeah.
know, like people are not going to be able to handle, um, you know, their parents in the home, um, and et cetera, et cetera. So what's going to happen? And that's my question: is
Yeah.
how can we get more exposure nationally on this problem? You know,
Yeah,
this is
we
a
need
big
a bigger
problem. I mean,
voice.
just like we know about nursing shortage, right? This is a massive shortage.
Yep. Yep. We need a bigger voice. We need a bigger voice because when Kala decided to join the Colorado Chamber, they called me immediately. And then because I had simply commented, they made a public statement in one of our newspapers, and I simply thanked the president. Thank you for coming to bat for small business in Colorado on we're overregulated. She called me like within 10 minutes of my email and said, oh my gosh, you know, oil and gas does not have the same warm and fuzzies as grandma does. So she said,
Exactly.
can we use you? She said, are you afraid if we publicize this stuff that it will get, our articles get picked up by the major newspapers? Are you afraid of that? I said, no, we're okay with that. Because she said, grandma has warm and fuzzies because if grandma has no place to live because of overregulation, that means a whole lot more than oil and gas needs a 1,000-foot setback from whatever, you know. So we're trying to be a bigger voice and work smarter because obviously the Colorado Chamber has a bigger voice than we do. We're a small assisted living. The other organizations are struggling too because but join an association because then you have a collective body of voices. You cannot do this on your own. It is way too much time, don't you think, Michelle? You can't, I mean, it's just way too much time.
Yeah, totally. I think Colorado has a really good model. So for those of you who are in different states, you can follow our model a little bit. And we had to by necessity in 2017. And I think that's one reason that Vernon, Janet, and I and Brian are all so tight because we we were thrust into this big battle. And for us, Brian and I had just moved back from Europe with the intent of moving and just doing residential assisted living investing. And we had invested, we had done the Jean's online course from Europe. We came back, we did the 3-day, we invested in the inner circle, all of that. And then I got back to Colorado and I work on the policy level internationally, and Brian does too. And we know, we've drafted regulations for countries and things like that. And so we started reading our own regulation and quickly learned that it was changing in a way that would make it so we couldn't do exactly everything we had just come back to Colorado to do. And I'm a fourth generation Coloradan. And I said, that's not acceptable for me. That's not okay. And so we started to dig in and we started to see, okay, well, how do we get the word out? Well, Vern had his group, and I don't think back then, Vern, you thought it would turn into kind of this industry policy level group. But Vern helped mobilize, and Janet was here with all of her expertise. And now it's really come to the point where CALA can be proactive, which is fantastic. It's exactly what we need. So I think the lesson is you have to pay attention. This is a regulated industry. I know everybody's busy. You just have to get over the idea like, oh, I don't have time for that. You have to have time for it, either by delegating it because you're a member of an association that
Yeah.
does it, or staying involved yourself. But just stay involved, and it's a really good way just to be more positive about the things that affect your business. So the key model here is having an association like Dollar that has the voice with the members, having people on board like Janet who know what the heck they're talking about. I didn't know at that time, I didn't really know anything about assisted living. I knew about governments and regulations and laws and stuff, but I didn't know assisted living. So having this kind of group moving forward, that's kind of I think a good model that can be replicated. And like Janet says, just stay engaged. It really is very important. And thanks, Janet, for everything you're doing. You're just working your butt off. I mean,
Oh, I
really,
know.
you're just
You know what?
amazing.
It's a passion of mine though, because I don't want to see the group homes disappear, and I think they're at risk of disappearing. When we rewrote the regulations in 2007, they wanted to say that assisted livings could not dictate the clothing options for residents. And I was one of the few that voiced for dementia residents. You know, sometimes they forget to put their clothes on. So are we going to let our little ladies that are so dignified come to the dining room table without their clothes on? And so we were able to change that because we showed up and said, no, this is ridiculous. You know, we had a little lady that would only get dressed from the top up because that's her dresser mirror was only from the top up. She wore nothing on the bottom. And that's not a dignified situation for her. She wore her little pearls in her sweater and nothing else to the breakfast table. And that's why she got discharged from Sunrise, because she did not get dressed from the bottom down. You know, that's not okay. We need to show up to be an advocate, even on simple things like clothing options. You know, and that's what happened in Colorado here, was even clothing. And we were laughing about it going, are you kidding me? You know, and so, yeah, but you cannot be a group home owner and do this, because it's incredibly time consuming. You know, there's no way you can watch all the regs and all this stuff. So just belong to some type of an association that's watching them for you. So if you're in a different state, contact your association and see, what are you doing for us? We do trainings. CALA does trainings once a month on different things. We show you what the state's looking for in their surveys. We show you how to do a survey correctly, you know, and we try to be proactive on the training too, because there's 11 of us on that board that have been operators that know what's the state's looking for. We file quarter requests. What's the top survey problems? And then we train our facilities to know how to answer those survey problems. Because in Colorado now, I mean, I charge about $650 to do a mock survey for a home that's under 12 beds. The minimum fine in some of these is $2,000. So if you get nailed with stuff, so it's just ludicrous to not be proactive now instead of reactive, you know.
Janet, I've got a couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
And they kind of tie together. First question is, how do you find a lobbyist? And the second question would be, what would you expect to pay them?
You know what? There's a list of lobbyists on your state site. They have to register to be a lobbyist. At least it's how it's in Colorado, right, Michelle? They have to register to be a lobbyist. And then you need to find somebody that has some type of experience in healthcare, you know, that knows here what might be important, or somebody that deals with small business, you know. We pay Michelle, or we pay Jennifer Mello. We did share her with brain injury for a long time. So we pay her about $2,500 a month. And she's considered part-time for us. Some of her clients are Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield. They pay her full time. She's watching some of those same bills though, you know. And you'd think that the legislative session is only, you know, January through May. But guess who starts coming up with their ideas in the summer is the legislators. And they start meeting and talking to people. And that's when we start talking to them. How about you help us with this? You know, we have a couple of advocates in our corner now. Paul Lundeen, I've met him at several things. In our rewrite, or in that portability and training, we rewrote the thing 16 times, and one of the definitions for a QMAP got changed. We left out 3 very important words, which then we had to file another bill to get that changed. And so I went to the bill signing just because I might not ever be there again. And I met with the governor and we got to sign the bill, and I got the pin, the whole, you know, the whole thing. And in that, I ran into 3 other senators like, oh, you're back again. You show up, you get recognized. And they say, Paul Lundeen said, let me know when you need some help. And we've not had that before because they didn't know who we were. We do a legislative happy hour every year where we show up and invite them for happy hour. But yeah, you can get on your state website, Vern, and find your lobbyist. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions out there?
Hi,
And
this is Wendell Gates,
Yes.
Beehive in Grand Junction.
Yes.
So I'm out here in the western side of the world, and I get involved by writing letters and things, but I don't know all the things that are coming down. And you're saying that CALA gets together monthly and talks about all those things?
Yep, and we put out Tidbit Tuesday of anything the state's looking for. We now have a board member from Grand Junction. Barbara just joined. We've been looking for a Grand Junction rep for 2 years. Barbara, I can't remember her last name. She runs a bigger facility down there. Jason was going to be our rep, and then he never could kind of get that. Jason's part of Aspen Hospital, something.
Right.
Like that. Yeah. So we have been trying to reach out to Grand Junction. We made a road trip.
Barbara. So,
yeah.
But anyway, so you're saying, do you meet, or is this a Zoom call that you get together with? Okay.
Yeah, it's a Zoom call on Tuesdays. We're actually doing an in-person conference October 22nd. And now we've changed. We used to do 2 in-person conferences a year. We've changed that. We do 1 in-person conference a year. And now we're taking the CALA Roadshow. And we're coming to different places. I know it's hard for providers in Grand Junction to get.
Because it's
So
not
Janet,
feasible. Yeah, it's not
Janet, why
feasible
don't you,
for us
you can
to come to the state capitol to do anything.
Yeah.
So we're just out here.
Yeah.
And I know we had a group at one time that was 10 years ago, and it kind of died off, and it's like, okay.
Yeah. And
so
a lot
Janet,
of
just to summarize for him first, to summarize for Wendell. So if Wendell were to join CALA, he would get the monthly Zoom call.
Yeah.
You get the newsletter at the Tuesday tidbit email, right?
Yeah. And then he would get
then
regular reminders to do stuff like May 15th, you have to submit your flu shots. Like May 1st, we start reminding you, don't forget your flu shots. Yeah. We remind you of stuff that we know we've all been tagged on before. We remind you, don't forget you have to update your policies and procedures annually, and you have to update your quality management plan annually. You know, so we do those reminders of all 11 of us that have been tagged on those things. Yeah, and we do know that Grand Junction is struggling, Wendell. We do know. We've heard from a lot of you guys down there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
but and the other thing is your membership fees are not a lot, and your educational fees are not a lot, but they all go towards providing funds so we can pay a lobbyist.
And on top of that, Jim wanted me to tell everybody that if you want to contribute to CALA, ABW will match up to your first $50 for contributions to CALA. So we're trying to help you guys out and do our
Thank you. That's nice. CALA is organized as a nonprofit. So, yeah, so we are organized as a nonprofit organization. Michelle, thank you for the, yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. We're trying everything outside the box because Rachel and I have we have bigger plans than our pocketbook allows. So we're trying to see if we can apply for grants. And we don't know if that's going to fly or not in Colorado. But we're open to all, the Anschutz family pays for senior care and they pay for education, and we do both. So we're applying for grants, see if it happens. You never know until you knock on the doors, my thought. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, but
And you-
we will be coming to Grand Junction. We do have that on our plan, Wendell, to come to Grand Junction and do a 4-hour in-person workshop just to keep you guys up to date.
That'd be great.
Yeah, yeah. Any other questions? I'll even take questions about small group homes or, whatever.
Well, Janet, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, I hope that wasn't too much gloom and doom. I just had to put it out there, but hopefully we can all champion. Like Michelle Michelle and Brian have put in a bunch of time on this stuff too, so that's been, and Vern hears from me. I'll tell you guys, if something's not going well, then I start chomping on Vern's ear to say, you gotta do something, so. I got on him about the FGI thing, Michelle. I made sure he knew. Guess what we're doing? So.
Good to know. Definitely good to know.
Yeah, it is. So. All righty. Well, thank you for having me
All right.
back, Vern. It's been a while
Thanks
since I've been able to participate. Yeah.
So much. Let's give her a round of applause. The last thing of our agenda, which I somehow didn't get it on here, is haves and wants. This is an opportunity if you have something for the group, a service, or if you have a desire, if you're looking for partners, this is your chance to express it. Do we have anybody with a have or want? Go ahead, Janet.
I am teaching the administrators class again on May 12th. I think it's May 12th, right after Mother's Day. It is May 12th, and it's by Zoom business days from May 12th to the 23rd. And it is the administrator certificate. If you're out of state and you don't need the certificate, you can audit that class, and it's only $400 to audit. You don't need the certificate, but we go through how to set a budget. We go through how to run a group home. We go through safety features. So some of you may not need that certificate in Colorado, but you are welcome to jump on that and audit it for $400. And we go through everything. We go through even examples like Joe is your med tech, and he's been working with you for 2 years. He's fully trained. He goes up skiing and he comes back and he's on crutches. Can he still serve meds in your facility?
And what's the best way for them to sign up for that?
Yeah, that's through CALA. That's through CALA.
Okay.
So,
And what's Cala's website again?
you know what? Let me look it up and I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, great. Any other haves and wants?
Hey, this is Much Nakvi again. A want, I guess, is that if any of you in Colorado, and Vern, you and I have talked already, know of anyone wanting to sell their business, please reach out to me. I'm actively looking to acquire up to 3 around the 16 bed per location homes. So I'm market agnostic. I love Colorado, and I would love to have my businesses there, even though I'm in Seattle. And I have time freedom. I sold one of my companies back in the day, so this is what I'm wanting to do. So thanks.
Great, great. Thanks,
There's Cala's website in the chat, and I found it. Yeah.
awesome. Okay, any other haves or wants?
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison. I am a registered nurse in the state of California and just applied for my nursing license in the state of Colorado. Similar request to the last gentleman, as well as looking for any opportunities to partnership and gain experience. So I put my information in the chat and feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Terrific.
Allison, I just looked up for my daughter who's going from Colorado to California. Your license transfers here pretty easily. Hers doesn't.
Oh, yeah. Well, California's not part of the compact state.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
So you should be pretty easy to transfer your license out here. So that'll be nice.
Yes. And thank you, Janet, for your presentation. Your
Yeah.
passion and energy is very important and helps.
Yeah,
get
yeah. We do
involved.
have fun. The Cal board has fun. We have screaming amount of fun at our, at our conferences. So, it's not like it's hard to do. We do have a good time, and I have a passion to stay in the industry and make it work for small businesses. So, yeah.
Terrific. Any other haves or wants to share with the group? Going once, going twice. Okay, I want to remind you on the chat, there's a little, it looks like a folder, file folder, and you hover over it, it says file. You can click on that and it will download this chat in a text format so that you have the contact information of the people you met tonight and the links to everything that we've talked about. Want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and joining us. I know some of you that are on the eastern side of the states, it gets a little late for you. We do appreciate your attendance, and we will see everybody next month. And thanks again.
Bye.